I call to order the January 28th meeting of the Regional Transit Board of Directors. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Director Budge? Here. Director Hansen?
Here.
Director Harris is marked as being absent. Director Howell?
Here.
Director Hume?
Here.
Director Jennings? Director Miller? Director Natoli? Director Chenier?
Here.
Director Cerna?
Here.
Director Kennedy.
Here.
With that, we have a quorum of 90 votes.
All right.
This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel. Tonight's meeting will air on Wednesday, January 30th at 1 p.m. and replayed on Thursday, January 31st at 9 a.m. and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed caption. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to me or Adam. Please speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. We would appreciate everyone turning off their cell phones. And Director Natoli has arrived to our meeting.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is the consent calendar, items 1 through 5.
Okay, is there any questions, comments from the board?
I'll move consent.
Second.
Moved by Director Howell, second by Vice Chair Hansen. I have no cards from the audience. I take it that no one in the audience wants to comment. Okay, all of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Next item.
Motion carries at 90 votes. Next item is introduction of special guests, item number 6, resolution commending Andrew J. Moran, presented by Chair Kennedy.
Would Mr. Lee like to say anything to kick off?
I'm going to say the last after your board directors wait for the comment.
Okay, all right. Where is Director Moore? Oh, there he is, right there. Well, let me, if you don't mind,
Don't you want a motion to approve the resolution first?
I'll move that.
we have a motion by Director Budge.
Thank you.
Second by Director
Second
Howell.
by Director Howell, and thank you, Director Budge. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Motion carries at 90 votes.
Thank you. So I'm just going to say a few words. We do have, of course, the prerequisite commendation here, but I want to say a few words beyond that. And that's that, you know, when I came on this board not that long ago, Andy was actually the first chair that I had the privilege of serving under. And I'm very glad that I did, actually. Andy's breadth of knowledge, you know, he's one of those guys that he doesn't say a whole lot when he's up there, but when he does, everybody listens because you don't say too much, and also because of the respect that everybody held for Andy while he was on this board. I know I had the pleasure of going to a conference with Andy in Atlanta, and I learned as much from the conversations out in the hallway as I did at the conference itself. So, Andy, I know that the people of Folsom were well served by you all the years that you were on this board, and more importantly, this district was well served by you, and the people of the entire region and county were well served by you. So I thank you for your leadership. You're truly a gentleman, and it was a pleasure for the short time to serve with you that I did, but I'm sure that probably I would guess dozens of board members that you served with over the years would probably say the same thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Well, I'll just say thank you very much for the recognition. It does mean a lot. And for the record, Director Miller just showed, so. But
President.
This is an incredible board and an incredible agency, and it really morphed into that because of the efforts of a lot of folks, a lot of the people up on this board, an incredible team of employees, and the amount of credibility this agency has from when I first began serving has increased dramatically. And I know the folks that have served on this board for a long time and the employees who have been here for a long time certainly recognize that. So I just want to say it was a privilege to be a part of that. And my one other plug will be is that there is a vacancy on the retirement board for regional transit. So Jamie, I promised Jamie I would give it a big sell, and it is an incredible board to serve on. Don served on it for a long time, so Don and I will both say that you will really enjoy that experience to step up and serve on that retirement board, learn where all that money gets invested and things like that. So maybe Patrick Hume, he looks like he might be interested. No, shaking his head.
We'll be getting to that later.
So I won't be here to see who gets that, but I'll watch it on TV. But anyway.
Stop staring at me. I'm still on the phone.
But thanks for the recognition. Sincerely appreciated. And I don't miss all the meetings, but I do miss all the people. So thank you very much, everyone.
Director Chenier.
Thank you. Question and a comment. I guess the question, maybe it's for our legal counsel, is do you have to be a member of the board to serve on the retirement committee, or can we appoint a citizen representative?
You do not have to be a member of the board.
So
Thank you, Jay.
I would be very careful about walking out of the room at any time tonight. I just wanted to add my 2 cents here, and I got to serve kind of with Andy when I was chair and he was vice chair, and he took over for me. It was really a pleasure, and I think everything Patrick said rings very, very true. I mean, you were incredibly knowledgeable, but the style and manner in which you conduct business with respect both for the organization, the institution, and your colleagues is really unparalleled. I just want to say thank you for your public service, and maybe the retirement board is something you'll consider as you retire. You got experience, that's true. But thank you for all your work.
Mr. Lee?
Thank you. To make sure I'm not emotional, so I'm going to read my note. Very short note, just half page. So it's truly a great pleasure and honor to recognize your long-time leadership, and it's very sad to see you leaving us. Director Morin served on the SACRT board for 12 years. His tenure on the board began in December 2006 when SACRT formally opened our light rail service extension to Folsom. And it concludes the month after Folsom City Council approved the annexation agreement with SACRT, which is likely Director Morin's greatest legacy, and surely will benefit this region for a long time to go. Right after annexation with Folsom, then Central High immediately followed suit. Then we're working with Elk Grove to first try to run a good service. Then after that, we will talk about annexation. Director Morin is a strong regional leader of great vision and integrity. He served admirably not only on our board of directors, but on SACRT's retirement board, and he's a very tough director in that board. And also SACRT's operations and planning committee. Director Morin was our board chair in 2017 and led many of the improvements that we are enjoying today and in the future. Because of your extraordinary leadership in recent years, along with your board colleagues, SACRT was able to make a historical turnaround, become a remarkable regional organization, launch late night service to Folsom along the Gold Line, and secured an $85 million state grant, along with other match, a $150 million grant to begin modernizing our aging light rail system and the double tracking in the city of Folsom to allow for 15 minutes service frequency. We will have over 20 new lower floor accessible light rail vehicles in 2 years. That will be a huge improvement for this region. We are truly owns Director Morin a debt of gratitude for your service to the residents of not just Folsom and the entire Sacramento community. On behalf of 1,300 full-time and contract employees, I want to let you know that your legacy will definitely continue, and we will miss you. Thank you very much.
And I'll just add one more thing. I never had the privilege of having 9-vote waiting, so just make sure that that incredible voting power doesn't go to Mayor Howell's head, okay?
Could we actually get the full board out in here in front here and we could take a photo?
Yeah. Go around the side.
All right, can we try to maybe squeeze in a little bit? Just want to make sure I can get everybody in here. There you go, Sam. A little more on this side. All right, I got everybody in, but I don't want to see that. Okay, look right here. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Big smiles. Awesome.
Item number 7, employee recognition presented by Henry Lee.
Okay, good evening, Chair Kennedy, members of the board, and the public. Today, we will present our employee awards for long and dedicated service for the last quarter, October to December 2018. We have a total of 8 award recipients. 6 are not with us due to job duties, and 2 are with us tonight. The 2 award recipients with us tonight are Kenneth Matsushima, electromechanical with 30 years of service, and Edmodo Di Natore, mechanical B with 25 years of service.
Wow.
Thank you.
Henry, smile.
Moving on, new business, item number 8, appointments of SAC-RT board members to various boards and committees. Oh, I'm sorry, going backwards, public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda, I apologize.
Oops, almost.
I get a oops every once in a while.
First, Mike Barnbaum.
Good evening. Thank you, Board President Kennedy and members of the board. I want to congratulate the following people. Vito Chiesa, Patrick Hume, and Scott Haggerty. They have been selected in the item of election of officers at Friday's meeting in Fresno, respectively as Board President, first vice president and second vice president of your San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority. Congratulations on this incredible honor for the 2019 calendar year. But that wasn't all that the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority took information and action on. The Joint Powers Board voted to authorize Board President Vito Chiesa of Stanislaus County to enter into the negotiations for a major schedule change to take effective on Monday, April 1st. The schedule change, unfortunately, will eliminate the morning express because of dwindling ridership and revenue. Graphs had shown ridership was only around near 50 riders and likely not to increase. The new schedule that will come out will be what's called a pulse schedule, in which all trains arriving into Bakersfield or departing Bakersfield will be once every 2 hours and will be on the same schedule 7 days a week throughout the year. So no weekday schedule, no weekend schedule, no holiday schedule. It's a daily schedule for simplicity for people to understand. The board also took action to take a concept into consideration of express train skip stop service to take effect next April 2020 schedule change to allow for faster rail service between Bakersfield and Sacramento. Several concepts were studied, and that is going to be a continuing discussion. The board's next meeting is March 22nd in Stockton. They will take a look at the Parada law, a law that prohibits bus-only travel. You have to currently have a rail segment. And the board also will take up the JPA's business plan at the next meeting and get it to the CalSTA by April 1. If you have any questions, I will be here throughout the meeting. Thank you.
Rick Hodgkins.
Thanks. All right. I wanted to attend the last two board meetings, the one on December 10th and the one 2 weeks ago, but they were out of my, it was out of my control. So to Chair Kennedy, members of the board, for those of you new to this, welcome aboard, and for those of you returning, welcome back. Happy New Year. Wanted to point out a couple of things that about the Watanabe Light Rail Station. When you get off the light rail at Watanabe Light Rail Station, there is no longer a thing to tap your Connect card. That they took that out. That ought to be put back in. Why they took it out in the first place, I don't know. And second, I was not given, I heard at the beginning of this month that Paratransit will no longer be giving rides to people after 10 o'clock. Now, I am a regional center client and I have an Alta Pass, so I don't know if regional center clients are included in that change or not. But I know that some advocates, I don't know if there's any in this room, but I know many outside this room that were advocating against that, about stopping paratransit service after 10 o'clock. And with the previous former board member recognition, I wanted to tell him that I was here a lot of the times championing the Connect card. And I'm basically, I'm glad that light rail is now up to 15 minutes on the Gold Line during the weekends. Let's see if we can do that with the Blue Line eventually. And okay, let's see, more to come. later.
Great, thank you. Jeffrey Tartagia.
Greetings, board. Martin Luther King Day. Ended up having a couple of incidents through there, and so it suggested to me that there should be some improvement. And I was a little annoyed of what took place for increased ridership. Henry addressed that, and so I ended up having a meeting, like I suggested before, about dealing with electronic bulletin boards, and commenting about for both, should we say, January 30th, when they attempted with the shuttle service. So I'm hoping that some of the suggestions that I offered and made, and some of the training that seemed to be missing, will hopefully get addressed. I appreciated Henry's effort. I will also turn around and tell you, probably I am going to be watching what the STA board is doing, but hearing that things have been going on closed doors wise for the last 6 months with various committees leaves me totally unsatisfied with a proposal. And it seems to me, reminds me of the streetcar, and 34% of the public were used to it, accepting it. Until you make the outreach to all of the rural individuals. Granted, there is 10 districts that in the, shall we say, census districts that have less than 50 people in them. But until you convincingly that there is a real, not only need, but there is a benefit for those individuals that are in Rio Linda, those individuals down in Galt, and the other individuals that are coming along from Elk Grove and the other areas, that this will get people off the road and into public transportation. I think you're setting yourself for a failure for 2020, and I think it's not something I should separate myself away from. I will just watch you guys, and I will do written comment until there is a change in attitude. And since Jeff isn't here as part of that board, I will offer the other side of, please guys, all of you read your emails now from Mac so you know what's going on. One of the questions that should come from this board is, on these new devices being installed, how in the world, when they're broken, do you know about them? We have a recurring problem with the Connect card in that regard, and I'm hoping that the app will get changed so that you will, when that problem occurs, it will get directly answered.
Thank you, Jeffrey. David Schwegel.
Greetings, SAC-RT Board. David Schwegel, one of many volunteer certified champions for the Greater Sacramento Economic Council, promoting our great region. Back when I lived in Seattle in 2000, I did a presentation for ITE on creating a state-of-the-art transportation system for Greater Seattle within the constraints of Initiative 695. Tonight, I'd like to talk about creating a state-of-the-art passenger rail and mass transit light rail system for Greater Sacramento, perhaps with the help of a half-cent sales tax measure where all 100% of the proceeds would go toward the mass transit and light rail system. So what would that look like? I'm very pleased to see that we're actually making some traction on brand new light rail vehicles. Certainly I appreciate Santa Clara VTA taking pity on us and sending us their outdated light rail vehicles. Certainly I love those, but it would be nice to have 100% coverage of those brand new low floor light rail vehicles that are going to be put in operation out to Folsom. So certainly brand new light rail vehicles would be fantastic. We have Siemens right here in our own backyard. Let's work with them and talk to them about, hey, what does that next gen light rail vehicle look like, and deploy it here in our region as quickly as possible. TOD, it looks like we're also making considerable traction in that area as well. I was pleased to learn about the rail yards. 10 years of persistence. After the New York Times deemed the Sacramento Rail Yards America's largest urban infill project, it looks like not only is Kaiser moving forward, but also we found a major investor for the Sacramento Republic. And I'm also looking forward to seeing a high-speed rail museum move forward, as well as the UC Davis campus, a Sac County courthouse, as well as considerable residential and retail. Additionally, we need to be thinking in terms of transitioning the parking lots, i.e. think of Disneyland's 140-acre parking lot and how it became Disney's California Adventure. If we could do that with all those light rail stations that have major surface parking lots, that would be fantastic. Additionally, coverage out to the airport would be fantastic, as well as down to Elk Grove, over to Davis, up to Roseville. And of course, we have the SAC Roseville Third Track project moving forward, and we have ACE coming here into town in 2020, which is going to be fantastic. And finally, having Sacramento be recognized as a major hub for mass transit and high-speed rail activity. What went wrong back in 2002 was there was a population density study that showed our region well below Fresno even in terms of population density. Well, since then, our numbers have improved significantly, especially with the phenomenal population growth in our area. So I did get a chance to walk the halls of the Capitol, visiting all 122 offices, educating them on the value of moving Sacramento from the bottom to the very top of the high-speed rail food chain, and that will fuel bus rapid transit and the overall state-of-the-art light rail, mass transit, passenger rail system here in Sacramento. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Joanne Fuller.
Good evening, Board. I'm Joanne Fuller. I'm co-chair of the transportation team of 350 Sacramento, the local climate change group. We want to thank RT for the outreach that you have done with our community as you plan new bus routes for RT and optimize climate-friendly transportation here. We understand the need for efficient use of resources, which will mean there are no more 60-minute waits, and all lines will have 30-minute frequencies, and more will run later in the evening and on the weekends. This is all great news. The transportation team and 350 Sacramento understand these moves are to increase ridership and so increase funds for RT to provide more service, thus reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which is really good news for our region. However, we do have equity concerns. As you go forward, we want to make sure that low-income and underserved communities are not penalized. And because we need this kind of funding for underserved communities, we need to join together and support the bigger goals, funding a mass transit system. And particularly, we want to encourage you to resist diverting funds from the RT budget for priorities that better weight future funding. And we would include the free fares for students as one of those projects that we think could wait. So thank you. We encourage you to look at the underserved communities, particularly the folks who need to ride the bus, and really make them whole. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last card.
Moving on, item number 8, appointments of SAC-RT board members to various boards and commissions. And I'll go item by item if that's okay with the chair.
Sure.
Item A, chair appointment to SAC-RT's retirement board. Currently, Mr. Lee, Director Morin, and Rick Jennings as alternates served. So what we need is 2 members and an alternate.
This is for which board?
Retirement board?
Retirement board. Okay, I did ask board members to let me know of your interest, and none of you responded to that. So I'm going to ask right now if there is a volunteer for the retirement board.
I move Director Morin.
Yes. It was either that or Harris.
Not it.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, I think Mr. Lee should be reappointed, and then
Already done it. Don't look at me down here.
So, okay.
Mr. Harris?
Since I'm hearing nobody's running to the podium to volunteer, then the board will appoint Mr. Lee and the chair. Next item.
Typically what we've done.
And we need an alternate to Chair Kennedy.
And the alternate would be Director Jennings. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. The next is B, and this is a motion and a second from the board. Appointments to the Capitol Corridor Joint Powers Authority. Currently, Director Harris and Miller serve with Directors Hanson and Jennings as alternate.
Okay, now here I did hear from a member, and so I will make the motion to reappoint Director Miller and appoint Director Howell with Directors Hanson and Kennedy as alternates.
So moved.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Or is that a motion? Second.
We have a motion and a second?
Yep.
Second by
Me.
Vice Chair Hanson.
You can't.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Next.
Next is C,
The motion, so I guess.
appointment to the Sacramento Placerville Transportation Corridor Joint Powers Authority. Currently, Director Budge serves and Director Natoli is alternate.
I'm happy to continue.
I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Director Budge as to the Board of Directors and Director Natoli as alternate.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Next.
Next is the appointments to the Paratransit Board of Directors. And currently, Directors Hume and Hanson serve on that board.
And I have spoken to both members, and both members are willing to serve, so I will make a motion to reappoint Directors Hume and Hanson.
Second.
Second.
One comment. Olga,
Yes.
would you mind working with the Paratransit General Counsel to see if we can have an alternate for that board as well? And I'll mention it to the executive director, who happens to be sitting out here, when I see her at our board meeting.
Who was inundated by phone calls about that very issue today.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Next item.
Item E, appointments to the Downtown Riverfront Streetcar Policy Steering Committee. Currently, Director Harris and Director Budge as alternates serve on that committee.
And Chair will make a motion to reappoint Director Harris as a member and Director Budge as alternate.
Second.
Appoint two members?
Pardon me?
No, just alternate.
Member and alternate.
Member, no.
I know, obviously,
Oh, okay.
appoint two members.
I didn't catch the second, I'm sorry.
Director Howell.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Next item.
Next item, or last item, appointments to the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority. Currently, Director Hume serves with Director Natoli as alternate.
I will make a motion to reappoint Director Hume as a member and Director Natoli as alternate.
Second.
It's a motion by the chair, second by Director Budge. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you.
And all those motions carry at 100 votes.
Yes.
Moving on, item number 9, information, update on SAC-RT Ford activities and progress since the December 10th, 2018 board meeting. James Boyle presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. James Boyle, I'm the Director of Planning, and tonight I'm here to provide you an information item, an update on SAC-RT Ford. As you know, there's been a lot going on, and we've been getting a lot of great input and feedback from the public. So tonight I want to go through and update you on our public involvement, what we've been doing, what we've been hearing, and I also want to update you on some of the route proposal changes that we have in place, and then talk about a few other routes. So quickly, I just want to make sure everyone's kind of on the same page and with SAC-RT Ford and what we're doing. Again, this is a blank slate look at our bus network, and to design a better network. And what we brought before you on December 10th was a network that provided 7-day-a-week routes, that provided more weekend service and more frequent service and more evening service. So just want to kind of reiterate that and to talk about, there's 24 routes that we're proposing to improve the frequency on and to increase the span of service as well. So just want you to know that we've been busy. We're listening to the public, and we are continuing to make improvements to our network every day. So I want to go through our public outreach process and what we've been doing and what we've been hearing. Staff has been super busy since the December 10th board meeting. On the slide here in front of you, you can see that we have held 4 open houses in the month of December. We've attended 10 different community meetings. We have held up to 21 SAC-RT Ford specific presentations. We've ridden our bus system over 72 different times. We've had 5 stakeholder meetings, and we've we've received, this says 300, but I believe we're close to 400 comments now. And those are from email and phone calls and actual letters. And we get feedback from operators as well. We have a great display set up in our operators training room or break room for them to respond and look at what we've done. So we have no shortage of feedback from the public. I think this is a sign of the success that we've had in getting the word out. Social media has been great. Our website, there's a lot of great information on our website. So the next slide is a map, and I really wanted you to see on a map where we've been and what we've been doing. So again, this is from December 10th board meeting, basically up into today. All of the red dots that you see on the map, and some of them are a little hidden by other dots, but those are the maps where we've held our open houses. You can see we had one up in Citrus Heights. We held an event out in Rancho, Cordova. We had one here at the auditorium, and we also had an event down in South Sac at the Pinnell Center. The green dots represent all of the SAC-RT Ford specific presentations that we've given across our service area. The blue dots represent community meetings that we have gone to and attended and spoken about SAC-RT Ford. And the yellow or gold dots represent those meetings that are planned or we're working on scheduling. So we are continuing to add locations to this map. Like I said, we've been very busy. We held some coordination meetings with Rancho Cordova staff in the last 2 weeks. We've met with city staff a couple of times. We met with SHRA. We have a scheduled meeting with the county to go over things with them, and also with Citrus Heights. So we are continuing our outreach at a fever pitch.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before you leave the map, could I ask
Yes,
a question?
sure.
I noticed that north of 80, namely the Natomas community, seems a little bit devoid of dots. Is there,
Okay.
I mean, we have more than 100,000 people that live in that part of the community. And I don't see any planned open houses, or I didn't hear you mention any in that part of the community. Is there a particular reason why it seems that there's some sparse?
Well, it may be that we've maybe have reached out to some groups and we haven't heard back yet, so we haven't planned anything or scheduled anything. But I could follow up with my staff and marketing staff and look at that area specifically.
Yeah, two things to keep in mind. One is the fact that we've had an intent that the community is well aware of for decades now to get light rail extension out to the airport, and obviously
Yes.
runs through that part of the city and the county. And number two, we have exactly one bus line right now that's serving Natomas, and so it seems to me that with the population, given the population, the sparse RT service that we enjoy now, and the fact that we have a major project that continues to be slated to go through that part of the city and county, you'd want to actually have some very particular focus on doing the kind of outreach that you're giving us an update about in that part of Sacramento City and County.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that, and I will follow up on that for you.
Thank you.
So continuing on our outreach efforts, we have also been paid particular attention to our bus routes. We want to make sure that our riders know what's going on. So we have scheduled staff to ride all of our bus routes. We have ridden over 40 different bus routes so far. We've been at 12 different transit stations and transit centers. We have covered, as of now, a majority of all of our bus routes, but we will continue to outreach on our buses to make sure that our riders know what's going on. And this has been really successful. We've gotten a lot of great feedback from our riders. Just getting the word out on the buses is really good. So continuing the comments that we've received, this bar chart basically shows the top 5 routes that we received the most comments on to date. And you can see that we've gotten quite a few comments on Route 38. We got a lot of comments on Route 62, 34, Route 13, and Route 2. So this is just a highlight of the ones that we've received the most comments on, but we have received comments on almost every single route. And so while the bulk of tonight's presentation will focus on these routes that we proposed for major service change, I want to be sure that we're not forgetting all of the new routes that we're talking about out there, the new routes that we're adding more frequency to, and also updating or expanding the span of service. So I want to talk quickly and walk you through some of the bus routes that we've gotten a great deal of feedback on, and from reviewing public comment and continuing to do internal tweaks of the network. There are certain situations where we find solutions, where we can make changes and we can fix things. And I think a great example of that one is the Route 38. This was a route that we had originally slated for elimination, just based on proximity of other routes and light rails. So we presented it for elimination, but we heard a great deal of feedback from the public. And with that feedback from the public, we also, like I said, continue to look at our work every day and to make improvements on this. So actually what we were able to do with the 38, instead of having a route that basically has hourly service, we were able to combine this route with Route 30, which allowed us to simplify the route and to improve the frequency on this route. The new 38 will run every 30 minutes, 7 days a week. And it also will combine with Route 30 through Midtown and Downtown, which will give us 15-minute service between Downtown and Midtown on the Route 30 and the Route 38. So that was a great example of, not only hearing from the public, but staff continuously looking at what we proposed to you on December 10th and making those changes and making those updates. So the next route I'd like to highlight for you is Route 26. We got some feedback on this route. This route currently runs up Watt Avenue, and you can see the existing route there. Terminates basically at McClellan Park and kind of loops through there and serves the VA and the commissary. This is a 30-minute weekday route. What we had proposed was taking that loop out of McClellan out and running the route straight up Watt, up towards the North Highland area. And we would extend the weekday service to 10:30 at night, and we would have weekend service till 9 p.m. at night. And we would improve the frequency on this route from 60 minutes to every 45 minutes. Going back and re-examining what we had proposed, we decided that we should probably leave the detour into McClellan Park to serve our veterans, to serve the VA clinic there, and to serve the commissary. And upon further evaluation, it was determined that it really only adds about 1 to 2 minutes of trip time. So I think that's a positive outcome of us going back and doing some reevaluation. The Route 33. This was a route that was originally created to fill gaps in between the light rail stations of Globe and Alkali Flats. We had proposed this route for elimination, but we began to realize that it wouldn't be that easy. We have been working with the city, and we have been working with SHRA on grants to help fund the Dos Rios development and the light rail station there. So upon our discussions with the city and SHRA, we agreed to leave the Route 33 in because it is so tied to funding for an important project. We thought that'd be a good idea to leave it. And we spoke with, like I said, SHRA, the city, and also Loaves and Fishes. So we addressed those comments and concerns. And we would leave the Route 33 operating until the Dos Rios light rail station opens. And then at that time, we would reevaluate the route and see where we stand. So that was a good plus there. So what I would like to do now is to talk a little bit about some of the routes that we're not proposing for elimination, but we're just proposing, instead of running these routes all day, we should focus on the peak hour for these particular routes. And those are routes 2 and 6 in the pocket area. You can see by the map here. Staff did a great deal of research on these routes, and we were able to determine that we have really good peak hour ridership on these routes. The AM peak does well going into town, and the PM peak does well coming out of town. The afternoon trips were not as strong, so we thought that these would be better served as commuter routes. The Route 5, you can see here, we also proposed that this route not be eliminated entirely, but we would save this route to serve school trips that are important to that part of the community as well. And then Route 34, we've gotten several emails on Route 34, and we've heard from some of the board members about Route 34. And this is a route that we propose to leave at peak hour because we have strong ridership in the AM and the PM peak, but we would not run it during midday. And I also would like to point out that we have Smart Ride transit zone that we were proposing for the downtown, midtown, and the East Sacramento area that
Sorry, we have a question here.
Sorry.
When you say strong ridership in the AM and PM, what do you mean? Because Route 34 has always been one of the lowest performing routes, especially since the hospital closed. And I live on that route and I see empty buses virtually every time I look out in the morning or afternoon.
So we have some stops in the AM peak and the eastern part of the route there where we have it. I think it's like, James, correct me if I'm wrong or help me out here. It's somewhere in the vicinity of 18 to 20 boardings.
Yeah, we have around 20 boardings on a few trips, and we have one that gets close to 30.
So we have
reverse commute are pretty empty, but the peak hour buses do pretty well.
Where are they going for the reverse commute? Any idea from talking to the riders?
For the most part, they're not going anywhere. The ridership's very low in the reverse commute. We're mostly seeing ridership going into downtown.
No, that's what I mean. But so this is an example. Since I've been on this board for 6 years, we've talked about Route 34, especially after the hospital closed, and we've never really resolved it. So the fact that we got a couple complaints about removing it, but we don't necessarily have this is better because running empty buses hurts the whole system.
Yes.
And it reduces ridership for other parts. There's so many transit options in this area. I'm just curious if we could use those same hours of travel time. I can't remember what the hours in service are called, to support other more needy communities that have more. 18 boardings an hour. It's not a terrible amount to maintain a route for, when maybe we reroute those people and provide service a different way. But it seems like we're undermining the whole plan by leaving low performing routes like this and sacrificing communities that probably need better headways or ridership for this type of route.
I agree.
James,
yeah.
Chair, last week I had one-on-one with Director Harris. He expressed the similar concern what Vice Chair just expressed. And let's talk about to say what we can do, because this is not set, fixed. We're going to continue to make improvements.
No, and I understand that. I guess the reason I wanted to ask that question, I know we have a lot of people here, probably to talk about the routes that they care about or what their comments are on the proposals. But there is a lot of good things that we're doing here, but there's a lot of stuff that maybe we could do more good if we refocus those resources to communities that have no transit options or need better headway, so those people can use our system.
Okay. And I appreciate those comments, and we'll definitely take a look at that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Quick question about Route 5. When it says, you have here, it says no summer service. Is that intended to mean no service during the 3 months or so that kids are not at
Yes, because we identified that there are a lot of students that ride the bus to Florin High School.
Is that typically June to August?
Yes. Mid-June to Labor Day, basically.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, City School District is changing their schedule.
That's Elk Grove.
So we need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
We sync ours with the schools as best we can.
Yeah.
Could I just ask, Chair?
Yes.
While you're on that, just on the Route 5, so the Adult Education Center for Elk Grove is there at Gerber. I know they have other services there, so you say you're not going to run during summertime, but I do think they have adult training there and adult classes. And again, I don't know what the utilization is. But have you looked at that, and have you had that discussion with some of the principals there at the business center?
Yeah.
We get more ridership really on Route 54 to the Adult Education Center.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. But Route 54 is also proposed for elimination. So the area east of 99, specifically east of Power Inn, we're proposing Smart Ride for that area due to just lower ridership levels.
Okay. Have you talked to the business center though, James?
Not specifically.
Okay, it might be a good idea to do some outreach there, and might be able to give you some idea of what their attendance draw is. And again, obviously your ridership numbers are going to be a part of that equation, very important to RT. But I would just suggest, I know in years past they've been before this body, either when service was eliminated and or to talk about how they can connect with folks that may utilize it, particularly from say south to Broadway all the way down to to the southern portion of the Elk Grove district. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Do that. Okay, so moving on, I want to talk specifically about a few routes, and these routes that we're going to talk about are routes that either are proposed to have major realignments or routes that we are proposing to discontinue service on. So Route 13, this is one where we actually received a great deal of feedback, but I think it's important to kind of take a step back and look at the route as it exists today, where it goes, who it serves, and then what we're proposing. So what you could see today is in the green there. It's a short route, and the anchor points of the route really are not strong, but not bad. The ridership on the route averages around 360 trips a day, and the northern part of the route, unfortunately, serves mostly a light industrial, sort of an office park area, so there's not a strong demand there for all-day service. So what we looked at was how could we make this route better? How could we extend it? How could we make better anchor points for this route? So what we proposed doing was to extend the route. Instead of going straight north across 80, we would turn west and head down San Juan. And by doing that and extending up north, we were able to connect the route to 2 high schools, a library, and a junior college. And we would also be serving low-income and minority populations who live along that section of San Juan as well. So we thought that would be an important thing. We also have proposed to improve the weekday frequency to 45 minutes, and we would also add Saturday and Sunday service to this route. So the new route, we're actually forecasting to see an increase in ridership with the increased frequency, and we believe we have strong anchor points. And then in the middle, we believe that we serve some neighborhoods that are currently underserved, and we think that we could build strong ridership there with the 13. And this is just sort of a backup slide for the 13. It kind of gives you an aerial shot on that north end there of, you can see the larger buildings. Those are light industrial uses. There are some office building use in there, and we have gotten some feedback from folks who work at some of those office buildings who do not want to see the route go away. But they have access to great service on Truxell. The walk is a little less than a half mile, but it's doable. And then you can see the residential component to the right there is population density, and you can see where we extend the route over through San Juan and then back up to the north there. So Route 19, this is another route where we had talked about making major service changes too. You can see the existing route is pretty long. It runs straight north up through Alberta and Rio Linda, and it cuts over on Alberta Road, and then comes all the way back down Watt Avenue to Watt I-80. So what we had proposed was truncating this route in the Rio Linda area and running it at 45-minute frequency with longer hours. Based on some feedback and further evaluation, what we're proposing to do now is to continue the route north, continue it over Alberta, and then connect it in North Highlands there at Watt with the 84 and the 26. This would give us better service up there for bidirectional reverse peak trips, and we believe that we would probably attract more ridership by making this important connection. So this is some suggestions that we're proposing for Route 19. Route 22. This is a route that we are proposing for elimination. You can see it's a very short route. The anchor points on this route are not very good. Ridership really is not that strong. But what we are proposing to do is to extend the Route 68. You can see the blue line coming up from the south there. We would extend the Route 68 east to Arden. We would make this 30-minute frequent service 7 days a week, and we would also include evening service. And Route 23 would still continue to connect at the Arden Del Paso light rail station for service every 30 minutes. And Arden Arcade actually is one of the areas where we're seeing an increase in service level, because we believe there's a strong demand for good ridership in the Arden Arcade area. It's set up well for transit. And, we think that we can definitely build some ridership there. So Route 24, this is up in Citrus Heights, Orangevale area. Again, this is a route that doesn't perform very strong. So what we're proposing to do with 24 would be to eliminate this route that acts as a loop. And it's important to note that this area is currently covered by Microtransit. So the microtransit provides an access to transit in this area. That the microtransit connects folks to the historic light rail station in Folsom, and microtransit actually has a longer span of service than the current existing 24. And also, it's important to note that the microtransit zone that would also connect citizens in Orangeville to Antelope and Citrus Heights in one seamless zone. Route 28. This is another route that we have proposed for elimination. It currently runs hourly. There's no weekend and no evening service on this route. And in terms of our overall routes, it's not a very strong performer. And you can see that it closely parallels the existing Route 21. So we are proposing that folks who use the 28 would have several other good alternatives. One would be access to Route 21 that runs on Sunrise and Coloma, and that route would have improved weekend frequency. So citizens would be getting better frequency on that route. Also, we have to remember the Gold Line on Folsom now has 15-minute weekend service, and the new 74 on Folsom Boulevard will have improved weekday frequency to every 30 minutes, and we will add weekend service on that route as well.
Yes, Director Troy.
Yeah, just a question. If I recall correctly, it was about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, we extended 28 to the Rancho Cordova Library. So is 74 going to serve the Rancho Cordova Library because we don't have a
It will.
Horn Road station? So it will.
Yes.
It will.
Yeah, and in fact, it'll have 7-day-a-week service.
It's better service.
That's great.
Which
Yes.
it's
So where
currently just
exactly,
I got
so where does 21 begin and end? Because you can't read that on this little map.
21 begins at Lewis and Orlando Transit Center on the county line.
and then it comes all the way down, and it ends at Mather Mills.
Okay, but 28 has been going down to Butterfield.
Is it Butterfield, James?
Yeah, the 28 today goes all the way to Butterfield. The 21 does go only to Mather, but the segment from Mather to Butterfield would be covered by the new 74, which would be 7 days a week, which the 28 isn't right now, and it would be every half hour, which right now the 28 is just once an hour.
Right.
Okay, well, I know you're working with staff, which is really important, but it's just, it's really important that people be able to move up and down Folsom Boulevard on a bus at a reasonable time frame.
Yeah, under the new proposal, they would actually have, more bus service. They'd have twice an hour instead of just once an hour, and they would have
Yeah.
weekend service too.
And I got a slide for Rancho Cordova, and I'll talk in a little bit more detail when we get to that one. So the next couple of routes I want to focus on are in South Sacramento, and it's important to remember that when we talk about this part of our service area, we got to keep in mind the Blue Line extension to CRC. We never went back and reevaluated our bus lines after we did that extension to CRC. So this project is kind of going back in time and fixing some of the routes that run down there. So the first route we want to talk about is the 47. The 47 you can see here is a short route. Again, it has very weak anchor points, and ridership is really not that great. We're proposing to eliminate this route. But folks who ride this route, there's nearby alternatives that have better headways, more evening and weekend service. The Route 5181 combines for 15-minute service on Florin. The 56 has 30-minute service on Meadowview, and the 67 has 30-minute service on Franklin. So the next one we want to talk about, again, staying down here in the South Sac area, close to the Blue Line extension, is the Route 54. The Route 54 is an hourly route. There's very minimal evening service on this route, and there's no Sunday holiday service on this route. The ridership on this route is not strong, so we're proposing that we should eliminate Route 54. The western half of the service area would be covered by different routes such as the 55, the 81, the 56, and the 67. And those folks who live in the eastern part who would be affected by this route going away, we are proposing the potential of a new microtransit zone in that area to serve those folks.
Sure.
Yes, Director Trolley.
So if I could just understand then, how is that Parkway area being served? It's in Supervisor Kennedy's district, but I remember in years past having to really work hard, prior members of the board, to make sure we had kept service in that Parkway area. So long established, largely single family, there are a number of multifamily units. And you talk about, you kind of ring the area, but if you get from the internal portion of a Parkway, it could be a long walk to get to a bus stop. And you're going to take Smart Ride for the other side of the freeway. I get that. I understand the other side of 99, eastern part of the district. But what are you doing for that western portion of the area? How are you going to get?
That area is actually currently served by Smart Ride today by the Franklin.
It is?
Smart Ride.
Yes.
It's served by Smart Ride?
It is. We didn't show that zone, but it is covered by Smart Ride.
Okay, and what's the usage?
I couldn't answer that on the spot for that particular, corridor.
Okay.
But we could look at that. We could go back
It'd be
and
helpful.
look at the
You're going to
data.
come back in a month, and again, that's certainly Supervisor Kennedy, knows his district well, but I just, I know it's an area, though, that, you're trying to, bring in, obviously, businesses, workstations, you've got schools and such, a lot of activity, but you have a long-established neighborhood that, fairly sizable community area from Florin all the way down to, really down to Mac, so, okay.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, we'd like to highlight and talk about the Route 62. We've gotten a great deal of comment on Route 62 to date. So currently, the existing route offers 30-minute weekday frequency, 7-day-a-week service. The ridership on the route is pretty good, and we are not proposing to eliminate the 62, but we are talking about some possible changes to the routing of 62. So what we had proposed was a shortening of the route with no service south of Florin, and that we would focus our service on commercial corridors and arterials. Based on further evaluation of staff and some public comment that we've received, our revision to this is to continue the Route 62 down Freeport, and we would cut over, as it does today, on 43rd Street, thus therefore preserving service to the Alice Burney Elementary School, which we've gotten a lot of feedback on. And we would keep the Route 61 on Fruit Ridge as well. And I also would like to point out that in this particular area, especially the Pocket, Greenhaven area, we've gotten a lot of comments and concerns about all-day service being taken away and a lot of it being moved to peak hour. And we recognize that. I had a very productive meeting this afternoon with a gentleman who lives in this area. He was here and spent an hour with us. So it was a great meeting. And what we would like to propose for this area is to possibly look at having a Smart Ride zone in this area. We believe that the population of this area is well served by a potential Smart Ride zone. So we are putting that out for possible solution to this area as well.
So the Smart Ride zone would be like where the green is?
Yes, I'm sorry. The Smart Ride would be covered in the green zone there. So you can see the routes you see inside that green zone are those peak hour routes, but they would not run during the midday. So this would give transit access to folks who live there, who would desire to get to a transit center to get to our fixed route service.
Okay.
So,
Director Jennings.
so in your conversations with the public, because you say potential or possible Smart Ride, so what do they feel about that solution?
Well, I have to tell you, they like it. The gentleman that came and met with us today, and Patrick Kennedy, you were there at the meeting, he said if we would just give them Smart Ride, that they wouldn't even have shown up at the meeting to, express their displeasure with the service. So, I spoke with him today. He was here today, and we went through this proposal with him. So, while it won't work for everybody, this area we believe is a really strong use of Smart Ride, and it would really help augment the SACRT Ford network and what we're trying to do in that particular part of our service area.
So when you put the word potential, tell me what are the next steps?
So what we would do is propose. We would say, based on the network that we're designing, we believe that there are Smart Ride zones that we need to put out there to cover those folks who are worried that they're going to lose all-day fixed route service. So that's why I say proposed. It's a process that, obviously we would have to work with the board and make sure that you're okay with those zones that we're proposing. And we would probably need to take it back to STA as well, just to show them what we're doing. I have a slide in here specifically for Smart Ride, and I was going to talk a little bit more about that in detail, but it's a great question.
If I could jump into real quickly, that area has some interesting challenges because we have heard from a mix of people, both seniors and parents, and so the ridership needs can be very different. The Smart Ride tends to work really well for seniors that don't have the same like high volume, regular, everyday travel patterns. It provides at a low cost a really flexible service. But for the student ridership, it doesn't have the capacity. That's a classic fixed route solution. So we are kind of evaluating a number of different options. We're trying to find that right balance. What will work well between demand response, fixed route, and strike kind of an optimal balance in terms of costs and expenditures.
James brings up
go
a
ahead.
good point, because we did get a comment about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago from a gentleman who thought his kids would be able to ride. They were up in the north area somewhere, and they thought their kids would be able to ride Smart Ride to school, and it turned out the schedule was such that the kids couldn't count on being able to get to school on time.
Yeah, for school trips where you have, you may be filling up a 40-foot bus and they're making the same trip basically every day at the same time. That's a travel pattern that really is optimal for fixed route,
Especially if
fixed
you have to
schedule.
be at school at 8:13 in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's kind of about finding the right tool for the job.
Yes.
I should also add and thank Mr. Barnbaum for pointing out a mistake in this slide. Under existing conditions where it says 7-day service, that should actually say 6-day service. And I should add, in passing, that under the proposed scenario, the Saturday service would actually go from every 60 minutes to every 45 minutes. And we would also be adding that Sunday service also at every 45 minutes.
Yes. Thanks, James. Okay, so moving on, Route 65. We know that this is a route that certainly has its strong supporters, and the board, I know, went through a process several years ago about this route. So, it's not easy to stand up here and say that we're proposing eliminating Route 65. But we feel that, based on increasing the frequencies on some of the routes that are nearest to them, and also by, again, looking at creating a new microtransit zone, a Smart Ride zone, that would serve those communities of Glen Elder, Estates, and those neighborhoods in there. We think that that would benefit them. They would have an all-day transit service available to them. The fixed route currently, just the ridership is not good on this route. So we think that the microtransit solution would be a good fit for this neighborhood in this area. And, they have good access to the 81 and the 55 as well. So, moving to Rancho Cordova, routes 74 and 75. We are proposing to combine routes 74 and 75. And as Linda said earlier, we've been working with her staff on and trying to come up what's the best solution for Rancho Cordova. And I think one of the positive things that we've had in our discussions with Rancho staff is talking about the microtransit zone and how that fits in with Rancho Cordova and their residents. There was some concern about the loss of the 28 going down Zinfandel, but we believe with the increased frequency on the 21 and the walking shed is within walking distance of Zinfandel, that it would be a good fit. And then the population who lives in North Rancho Cordova tends to be a lot of retirees, and it's an older part of Rancho Cordova, and the microtransit Smart Ride zone would fit well here. And we think that it would get folks to that fixed transit. They could transfer to fixed route. They could transfer to light rail. So we continue to work, Linda, with your staff to come up with the best solutions possible for Rancho Cordova. And again, I would like to point out that we're preserving service to the VA hospital down there. We understand that that's an important center, and we want to make sure that we have fixed route transit connecting to that VA hospital. Yes.
Director Budge.
Without 28 on Zinfandel, what about the kids at Mitchell Junior High?
The junior high?
Yeah.
I'd have to check what ridership is to Mitchell.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Okay, we'll check on.
We don't. It's actually been a while since we've seen all the latest ridership statistics on all these routes. That would be a really great, you know how, we actually used to get it on a probably too frequent a schedule, but we don't get it very often anymore, what the ridership is on these different routes, and that would be extremely good, helpful background information to have at this point
Okay.
in this discussion.
We can certainly pull that. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Route 80. Route 80, as you can see here, is quite a long route. It currently has hourly service. It combines with the Route 84 on Watt Avenue to create a 30-minute service. What we are proposing is that we would improve Route 84 to 30-minute service, and so Watt would continue to have the same 30-minute frequency that it does today. We're also proposing to extend Route 26 into North Highlands, and that frequency would be at every 30 minutes. So better service every 30 minutes North Highlands compared to 60 minutes today. And the service improvements that we're proposing for North Highlands serves both minority and low-income neighborhoods who currently are underserved with our service as it stands today. And the North Highlands area, from our proposal, can see up to a 36% increase in more and better service. So, you know, the 80 is pretty close to what the 84 does now. So we feel that leaving the 84 and improving frequency and service on the 84 is a good solution there. Route 95. This one's in Citrus Heights. You can see it's a very short route. This route by far is our lowest performing fixed route. Ridership is not good, but what we are proposing is that we would combine this route with the Route 93. You can see that in the blue line here. So we have direct service to the blue line. We would add 30-minute weekday frequency at 7 days a week. So this is much improved service for this area, and we presented this to some of the Citrus Heights staff, and they approved, and they thought it would be great.
Yes, Director Natoli.
And just kind of a basic question, and I guess I've never heard it answered or asked, but maybe it has been, is how did we get the numbers for the routes?
How do we? That's a good question.
You wouldn't believe me if I told you.
James probably has some
That's
stories
probably why I
about
never asked the
that.
question.
I did fail to point out when we were talking about the changing some of our fixed routes to expresses.
Yeah.
The 100 series, we want to think of those as our express routes.
Okay.
So like the 2, we changed the 102 and things like that. Okay. As far as where the 95 comes from, I don't know.
Yeah, because you got 84 and 26 and 1 and 21. They're all, you know, in similar areas, so it's not like.
Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to it.
If you look at the old maps from like the 60s and 70s,
Yeah.
in a lot of cases, a lot of it is inheritance. We used to have a lot of routes that would run like all the way through downtown in the pre-light rail days, a lot of which became split. So then you start getting kind of mixed nomenclature, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
they're mostly historical artifacts.
Some
is
some
the
kind
short.
of legacy identification, and then
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And hybrids, that okay. All right, thanks.
So I want to touch on the school service. I know that this is important to the board, and this is important to the community, and it's important to staff as well, because we need to raise a generation who may not really depend on transit, but will use transit. So we recognize on the staff level that those trips to schools are important, and I would just want to tell the board that staff understands that. We recognize that. We're preserving school trips, rather like the 5 an example of where instead of eliminating the route entirely, we're leaving school trip in place there. And we're continuously working to improve our school service. I know James works very closely with our schedulers to make sure that whatever network proposal we bring back for final approval, that our schools will be served and students will have access to fixed route to ride those buses to school. So again, you know, the 200 series, those routes that we run for school service, those routes we're not proposing to change, but the fixed routes where, you know, there are concerns from parents, I just want to make sure the board understands that we understand that, we're getting the comments, and we're not forgetting about it. So Smart Ride, we talk a lot about Smart Ride, and I think now you're really beginning to see the full benefits of Smart Ride and how it fits into our network and our system. So what we're working on is basically using Smart Ride to fill in the gaps, to fill in where we currently have fixed routes and where we believe Smart Ride could provide a needed service. And that's not to say that everywhere we cut a fixed route, just put in the Smart Ride zone and everything will be okay. But based on analysis, and data, we can come up with those zones where we believe that Smart Ride would complement our new service. And you can see that on the map here. We talked about the pocket area. We talked about the Glen Elder area, and then the area south down there where Florin High School is and such, and then the Rancho Cordova zone, and you got downtown and midtown. So I just want everyone to understand that as we move forward in this project and we continue to tweak and refine the proposed networks that we brought to you, Smart Ride is going to play a huge role. So in the final network that you see, you will see our proposed networks with the Smart Ride zones all there together and how it's all going to fit together and work together, because you need to see that and the public needs to see that. So we're working feverishly, and yes.
Can I ask a specific question about the future zone part of this map? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see a future zone that perhaps takes advantage of the 68, especially as it runs adjacent to the Fruit Ridge Community Collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, is there a reason why that wasn't considered for an expansion as a future zone?
The proposed, what we're calling, I guess, the Glen Elder zone, would be situated between Florin and Fruit Ridge. Fruit Ridge, as it's shown here, would be the northernmost boundary.
Right.
We have kind of intentionally set out to start small with this zone. We have kind of anticipated that there might be demand to enlarge it. There's a number of other nearby destinations, like additionally, I think the Army Depot and some of the uses in there are likely candidates for expansion. But we did want to kind of start small and enlarge over time out of a desire to make sure that the capacity's there, that the wait times are there. We do have limited resources and buses allocated for the overall project. So
can I just quickly advocate that please don't wait long. I'm very familiar with that part of my district, that being the part from 14th Avenue on the north to Fruit Ridge on the south, MLK on the west, and Stockton on the east. It's about 6,500 people. It's a community of color. It's a fairly economically challenged part of our region. In fact, I'd argue probably one of the most challenged. And there's not a lot of opportunity in terms of east-west movement, transit options. There's certainly a 68 spine that runs through it. That's why I asked the question the way I did. But for instance, if you want to get to either retail, shopping, grocery opportunities along the Franklin corridor or on the Stockton corridor, there's no transit option there. So if you're telling me tonight that because you wanted to start small, you left the northern portion of that Glen Elder future zone at Fruit Ridge, I'd encourage you to think carefully about extending that up to 14th and keep the breadth of it between MLK and Stockton.
Okay. We'll do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to reiterate again that we are continuing our public outreach process. We have a really great informational YouTube video that staff put together that is an hour long. I know that's long, but it goes through every single route descriptive. And I think we've gotten over 300 views, probably close to 400 views now on that. And we've actually gotten some positive emails about actually doing that. So
100 of those were Mike Barnbaum.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
Is that you? So, I don't want to take up any more time because I know we have a lot of folks who are here to speak tonight. But again, I'm happy to be here, to stand here and present to you what we're doing. And we value the public's input, and we're listening. And, we're making changes based on things we hear in our continued work at the network. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, and we'll go from there.
Okay, we had good questions. Any others? Then we will go to public comment. We are going to limit comments to 2 minutes as we have quite a few to get through. Mike Barnbaum.
Thank you, Board President Kennedy and members of the board. So a week ago yesterday, I spent 5 hours going through everything distributed in this December 10th route descriptions paper. And it was to take a holistic approach at the route descriptions. Some were great, and you saw in your emails, maintain staff recommendation. But others are good but needed to be better. So just to highlight some of them for you, I won't take all the 5 hours I did during the email itself, but I'll highlight some of improvements. Route 1, every other trip to go over to the historic Folsom Station on Greenback. An extension of Route 67 on the south end to Delta Shores, combining Route 15 and Route 88 into one complete route at the Arden Del Paso Station, including service along West El Camino to the River Oaks master planned community in South Natomas. Service along Route 13, Del Paso Road up I-5 to Sacramento International Airport. Recommending the staff recommendation of eliminating Route 80, but reintroducing it later through the Nexus study discussed 2 weeks ago as a BRT on the Elkhorn-Greenback corridor to Sacramento International Airport, and highlighting 51 on Broadway from 5th to 65th, and a new Route 50 on Stockton from T to Mac, covering the UC Davis Med Center area with 2 bus routes. So those are some of the highlights to look at. But if you have any questions about this, please ask me. But again, let me just close to say bus service to the airport and light rail construction to the Elk Grove Civic Center.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol Nelson. I know it's tough to get it all in 2 minutes, but if we could try, because we've got another hearing item after this as well.
Okay, I'd like to talk about the Route 13. Okay, in the mornings, we have quite a full bus on the 623, 723 that I take. Quite a lot of people down North Market. We're trying to propose pick our buses in the morning and in the evening, so that we don't have to take several buses and walk quite a ways in the rain or the bad weather. It's not safe for us. We're walking up and down through Truxell and all that. And we'd like you to come out, ride these buses at these times. We never see you guys on the bus. I usually see full buses. So like 3 pick out in the morning, 3 in the evening, so we can make our connections home. Please come out and consider this. And we got a lot of, I work in the old Arc Arena building. We got a lot of people there. We got people across the street. I am at a state agency. We got a lot of people down on National. So please consider leaving it the same way, just doing some peak hour. You can run your other thing and the other way during the rest of that time. And you would get a lot of riders. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Paraset.
I'm here speaking as an advocate for the 38 route. It runs where it runs down through Broadway. There's a whole section there between 50th and Fairgrounds where you have hundreds of seniors living. and they use that 38 to maintain their quality of life, to go to the store, to go to doctors, medical appointments, just to get around, get to church. And so it's really important that that 38 remains. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, would it be okay to, I'm sorry, over here.
There you are. Okay.
Would it be okay to jump in with one point on that?
Sure, sure.
Just to be clear, we did touch on this a little earlier, but just to be clear, the initial proposal for Route 38 was for that route to be eliminated entirely, but we have revised that, and instead of it being eliminated, what we're now proposing is for service levels on that route to actually be improved from hourly to every 30 minutes. It would be on kind of a shorter, more simplified route, but the part that would be unchanged is the eastern part of it by UC Davis Med Center,
right,
and through Tahoe Park on Broadway, which is that same vicinity, Broadway from 58 to Fairgrounds. So that would actually go from hourly service to every 30-minute service. And we have, I don't mean to interrupt the presentation, but that's probably our #1 complaint is in that area, so I just
think
wanted
we're
to
all aware of
reiterate that.
Yeah, thank you. See that, Tony? You can fight City Hall.
That's over there.
Maddie Nunez.
She doesn't feel safe there.
Pardon me? I'm sorry. Oh, sorry.
Low blow.
Murray.
Thank you. I enjoy riding RT. I've done it for years, and I want to say thanks to the girls that answer the phones over there, but I especially miss them on the weekend when you call and you can reach no one. But during the weekdays, it's great. The 38 gets me to 29th Street Light Rail and University, where I can connect to various buses, and I love that. And I hope you keep the 65 going to Delta Shore or have another bus going that route. One of my main concerns, though, when I'm on the bus is so often we'll get to a stop and there's someone in a wheelchair or a walker, and because there's 2 wheelchairs on, the driver has to tell them that they need to wait for the next bus. So when we were looking at 38 being once an hour, that was terrible. So I'm really glad that we can go back and tell our neighbors that it's going to be on the 30 minutes schedule instead. And my last comment is there's a lot of activity downtown around the Capitol, and especially with the arena and everything. And whenever there's marches downtown or any function, 38 sometimes does not show up. I've had instances where I'm waiting and it doesn't show up, period, and it's not even anything happening. But especially when there's marches, and then it's the weekend, so there's no one on the phones. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Parasette.
Hi, good evening. Michelle Parasette, I'm with Public Advocates, and I'm also a member of the Sacramento Transit Riders Union. First, I want to thank Henry, the Jameses, and staff for all the work that they've done on outreach. It's been pretty amazing, and especially thank you for coming to SACTRU to talk about the different plans, the revenue neutral plan and the expanded service plan. And it's that expanded service plan I want to touch on a little bit. So PA, along with our partners at PolicyLink, Transform, Climate Plan, and other statewide and local groups, fought for almost 2 years to win transit operations dollars in SB1, along with probably folks at RT. So SB1 had a fix-it-first focus, and that included fixing the hole left in many transit system budgets after the Great Recession. Like transit systems across the state, RT had to significantly contract services and cut routes, many of which have not been restored. It is very clear in the intent language in SB1 what the transit operations dollars were intended for, and that's to expand transit operations. It was a fiscally responsible decision to not commit SB1 dollars until the repeal effort was resolved. But now that it is resolved, it is my hope that the board will use those SB1 operations dollars as legislators and advocates intended, which is to expand service. Thank you for all of your work. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Michelle. Barbara Stanton.
Good evening, Chair Kennedy and directors. Barbara Stanton, Ridership for the Masses. We liked the video. We sent it out immediately upon arrival and looking at it. It is a little long, but we want to thank James and James for it. It's easy to understand, and it's right on point. So thank you. And we will be sending more comments on the 19, the 22, and the 13. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Hodgkins.
Just wanted to follow up by saying congratulations to Citrus Heights, which is my fair city, for finally annexing into the RT system. James Boyle did not mention Bus 21, which I'm very happy is going to be doing its whole entire route from Lewiston, Orlando to Matherfield Mills Light Rail Station. One of the reasons why I have not attended anything at the new Golden One Center, concerts and stuff, is, you know, I could get light rail, but at night I wouldn't be able to get a bus back home, so I'm interested to learn what the new schedule is going to be. As far as the 82 is concerned, I know that wasn't mentioned. I assume that that's going to stay the way it is. Hopefully it stays on Butano. And finally, I'm worried about, I know that I could access the Matherfield Light Rail Station, but what if I wanted to access the Sunrise Light Rail Station or get somewhere on Sunrise in Coloma? I'm also worried about those that live more than 3/4 of a mile from a bus stop. You know, we need to find ways to shorten the walking distances, and if that means putting in more smart ride zones, connecting all the smart ride zones together, because I would hate to see gaps in the system, because I cannot walk very far myself. I can only walk maybe 1/4 of a mile at the most, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick Bryant.
Okay, my name's Nick Bryant. I just wanted to say, for Route 80, I do Route 80 from Washington Camino, and when I get done with bowling, I take bus 80, the 410 bus going to Water 80, and I connect to the 93 at Water 80, and I'd rather have you guys keep the 80 because that's my transfer to Water 80 for 93, and I take 93 to Orlando. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Tartagia.
Well, guys, there's a lot of specifics, but I'm going to make it the more general. Microtransit, assembly range. For the microtransit, you need to have the place. How do you get out of an area? You want something in there, but it's only designed for the, should we say, 5 or 10 mile space area. If somebody out of the area wants to get in there, how do they access it? Accessibility. I have yet to be able to try with an electric scooter to ride on microtransit. Those are some of the things that need to be corrected. Where you are not going to be having places, reducive service, gone service. I suggest you have some community centers that in this next month that you meet that show them that. As I've explained to the James, with the 22 disappearing, there's a lot of frightened people getting over to the Kaiser Morris facility. There's supposed to be more, but it's not explained. The maps that are out there right now, it's very confusing to figure where exactly, when they're overlaid, where exactly is it begin, end, and figuring out what really is the changes. As somebody mentioned, the 82, that's the most popular route, and yet I think there's changes, and I didn't see that tonight showing what the proposed changes were. I believe the 67 and 68, you had some changes through there, and really would like to see it not just go to the hospital, but to the new development center that's being planned over there at the county. There's a bunch more, but what I would offer to you and say that please go like to the Fair Oaks Library, please go to the centers that where you are tending to make the changes the next month to get the public input. I rode the 13 last week and got to hear a lot of these comments about the 13 as I was going to and from Fry's.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Gail Morgan.
I want to mention a couple things. First, congratulations and thanks to your staff members, including Tracy, James, and David, who all worked hard to get the TCC grant for that light rail station. I think that's really cool. I wear a couple hats, including Ridership for the Masses, Sacramento Resident Advisory Board, and SHRE's Commission. And in all those facilities, we got to work with RT in making that happen. The routes that I'm interested in particular, I really like the updated proposal for Route 19. I live off the 22. I'm happy with eliminating the 22 with the alternate suggestions of the 68 going up there. That would be helpful. I appreciate the update. Number of people we advocate for off the 38 line are going to be covered by that change, so that's excellent. And keeping the 33 until our TCC light rail station is installed is a very good move. I appreciate that. The biggest thing though is that 19. Last night I boarded and went across the top. I boarded in Alberta, or in the community of Alberta, rode across the top and came down to the light rail station. And in that trip, when I got on, there were 8 people that rode across the top on that particular run last night. So for all those people, don't do the new proposal, not the old proposal for the 19. Thank you.
Thank you. Alejandro Cabrera.
Good evening, Chair and board directors. My name is Alejandro, and I'm a district representative with the Office of Vice Mayor Eric Guerra. I'm here to testify on his behalf and to support the maintenance and increase of frequency for Route 38 and the maintenance for Route 61 and 65th. First, I want to thank you for your time and opportunity to give input on this important matter. As you have been hearing from the residents, changes to these routes will severely impact transportation and mobility for our district in District 6. As our economic development staff in the city of Sacramento works on programs to revitalize Stockton Boulevard and the New Square development, it's critical that we maintain Route 38 as a connector point between 65th Street and Stockton Boulevard. Without this route, many residents will choose to drive downtown and create further congestion on the already impacted arterial streets, which will in return worsen our quality of air in the region. Both routes 61 and 60 feet are critical for communities that lack access to grocery stores and fresh produce. As we have heard clearly from our community members in some of the RT open houses, we need these transportation options for employment opportunities and as a way out from food deserts. For those who depend on public transportation to commute to work, the proximity of these bus routes can make a difference between a community that is affordable to live in and one that is not. These routes are critical and will help address congestion on a busy corridor and promote equity and inclusivity across different areas in the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Zach Miller.
Good evening, Chair Kennedy and directors. I'm here to support the current proposal to keep the Route 38 and increase its frequency to every half an hour. The Route 38 is critical for the Towel Park, North Oak Park, and Med Center neighborhoods, including the proposed Aggie Square development, and for transporting workers downtown and back without adding more single occupancy vehicles to central city streets. The current proposal reflects substantial feedback from RT riders and responsiveness from RT staff and management. So thank you, and I encourage your support for the Route 38. Thank you.
Thank you. Kirsten Azar.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for taking into thank you for listening to us when we said to not eliminate the 38. Even if it runs like only an hour, like our schedule revolves around it. So it's a good solution right now to run it for every half hour. But just looking at the changes right now, like looking at the map briefly, it seems like a part of it skips to where I live, so I might have to take an alternative. So thank you for the consideration, but I also hope that you still consider like the few minorities that do take it in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, and you get the penmanship award, by the way. Okay, you don't. I can read Dominic. There we go. Sorry about that, Dominic.
Good evening, thank you. I'm with Kristen on...
And your last name, Dominic?
Tonell.
Thank you.
I'm with Kristen and Zach over here that keeping the 38 is a great idea. And also making it every 30 minutes would be helpful for everybody. I've been taking this bus for the past 6 years, and every morning I've taken it multiple times at 6 o'clock or 7 or 8 o'clock, and I've noticed that the bus is always full. And Kristen mentioned that the new revised proposal will skip a portion of it, the first portion of it, and that affects, I'm not sure exactly how many people will be affected by that, but along my route, I know at least 10 people take that route in the morning. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Richard Brown.
Good evening. Richard Lewis Brown, advocate for Bus 38. I've been listening to all the different responses, and let me be very clear. I didn't know RT was run for profit. RT is supposed to serve the public. So whether you have a usage rate of 4 people riding the bus or 1,000 people riding the bus, you're serving the public. Number 2, Bus 38. I disagree with the change. I know better. You cannot run every 30 minutes on J and L. It's a congested street, both streets. And that's why you want to put 38 to help Bus 30. I also think people who ride on P and Q should continue to have service. And I actually think that all these changes that are being made to all these bus routes is wrong. Again, it doesn't matter if you have 2 people riding at 12 o'clock during the day, going to their job, probably working a minimum wage job. It's about service to the public. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Marcia Johnston.
Seems kind of interesting to wear this different kind of hat since I'm a transit coordinator for general services and I'm mostly dealing with different routes, including Amtrak, and we're going to talk about the San Joaquin one of these days. But I'm wearing a different hat now because this change in the route hits me right through the running lights, since that's one I take home. And I apologize to Mr.
I'm sorry,
James.
which route was it that you were?
38.
Oh, thank you.
I apologize to Mr. James in the back, because when he mentioned most people are taking the, quote, gold line, I asked him what was he smoking, because I walked to that. I walked to that in the morning to 48th Street. It's a 20-minute walk. Now, yeah, a 20-minute walk to that. But I take the 38 home. I was concerned about the route being eliminated from Stockton to 65th, since we have a large seniors population in that area. So I want to thank you for reinstating that. I'm still trying to figure out how you get down to 5th and J, since I work in West Sacramento. But I want to congratulate you for not doing away with it, and hopefully the changes will work out.
Thank you. Christina Espergen? Was that close?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Hi, so I'm also here to express support for bus route 38. As you heard, myself and others take that bus to get to work every day, so we appreciate you not getting rid of it. Thanks.
Thank you for writing. Sarah Kerber.
Good evening, Director and Board. My name is Sarah Kerber. I'm with the Sacramento Transit Riders Union. I'm here to talk about a concern that SAC-TRU has raised repeatedly throughout this process, and that is the replacement of fixed route bus service with microtransit. The project is presented as a complement and to fill in service that is being removed, but also has admitted that it is going to play a large role in the project going forward. Our concern when it was introduced, microtransit was introduced as a pilot project, is that when you replace efficient and equitable service of a fixed route with less accessible and more complicated service, you can't just rely on a bus being there every day at a certain time. You have to actually take extra steps that you might not understand or be able to take in order to call for service. We were concerned that that would impact riders' ability to get around in our community. We also are concerned that as transit fads come and go, funding comes and goes for these projects. What happens when funding for microtransit disappears and these communities are left with worse service than they had prior to this realignment? Additionally, I just want to read one quick quote from Jarrett Walker, who describes the microtransit, which does little besides package dial-a-ride type service in an app. The interface may be convenient, but it can't overcome the efficiency of fixed route service. To pretend otherwise will make transit service less equitable. On average, microtransit seems to trigger an upward redistribution of the benefits of public subsidy. This is a very bad thing for public transit. So again, SAC-TRU would like the board to seriously consider the replacement of fixed route service with microtransit in long-term planning because we feel that it is less accessible, less equitable, and less efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. That is our last card. Is there any other closing comments any board member would like to make? Yes, Director Budge.
I just heard a couple of things that sort of resonated. And one is the ability to get to the Sunrise Station, because the Sunrise Station is a definite hub and draws people from a variety of places. It's also one of those designated stations to be remodeled or upgraded, and is a major hub for people just doing specific things like going downtown. Then secondly, as Rick was, when Rick mentioned it, it dawned on me that we have these places like the Sunrise Station that have farmers market. So in terms of thinking about how we serve shopping areas or grocery stores or, you know, access to fresh fruit or whatever, we might want to consider the presence of farmers markets. I'm assuming you can travel on W and V to access the farmers markets down there, but I don't personally know that. And then the point about the fact that microtransit is sort of an interior circulation mode of transportation. Looking at the map of future microtransit areas, remembering that we probably need to make sure that there are main routes that go through these microtransit areas, and obviously North Natomas, as Director Cerna is pointing out, they have one bus route. Rancho Cordova has two. We now may have one. So places like North Natomas and Anatolia are probably not going to be a part of that. Right. But otherwise, the microtransit areas that are within the developed urban area and already have bus service on major corridors make sure that they don't lose the ability to access the bus service on those major corridors.
Okay, thank you.
Chair?
All right, any others?
Chair?
Yes, sir, Ms. Miller.
Along those same lines, because I've heard this a lot about microtransit, and in my mind, it is great for point-to-point and providing mobility from your doorstep, everybody's doorstep, where we did the pilot project in Citrus Heights, to places within the city, whether it be the doctor or the grocery store. But I think one thing we're overlooking, we need to stress, is it's it'll also get you to transit. And I think we need to emphasize that. It'll get you to the number one in Citrus Heights, one of the highest performing lines, and boom, you're out of the city and away you go. And I would hope that we can use the data and the algorithms, whatever they do with this app, and see patterns where maybe a fixed route develops, where there's a definite pattern that a fixed route would serve better. But as far as opening up Citrus Heights, where a majority of the homes are over a mile from any bus stop, it's really made a difference, and it connects you to the rest of the region. Earlier there was some comments about SB1, and we were presented with enhancements to our options as far as service based on funding, correct? We didn't even talk about that tonight. But
No, we have.
We do have plans.
Yes.
I'm
looking at Henry, but yes.
Okay. And I think that's it. I did want to make sure that we took into account events downtown like marches or cycling events or parades, and that we had maybe, like you have for Sunday service, we have a disrupted downtown core service so the 38 to 30 whatever gets out to the outlying areas. It doesn't get stuck in downtown.
And real quick, if I could on that one, we've been working really close with the city staff on our routing in downtown. You know, we have a lot of buses that use Capitol, and that's bad for us because Capitol is always closed for festivals and marches, and so we're always having a detour. So you bring up a great point, and we're working really close with city staff and trying to figure out, using their plans for downtown and what are the transit priority corridors in downtown.
And workarounds. Thank you.
Just on that final note, there have been some conversations about trying to get the bus back to L instead of Capitol to help with those problems.
We'd love that.
Okay. Well, I'd be happy to help you with that.
That would be great.
So let me know how I can help.
Thank you, and we will. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And for those of you who didn't speak, or if you didn't get all of your points in, please continue to reach out to staff. This is an ongoing process.
Sure.
Yes.
So just to be clear, so February 25th, we're going to have this presented to us. Is that correct?
Yes.
A final recommendation from staff, is that the intent?
That's true, yes.
Okay, and are we going to be asked to make decisions that evening?
We will.
We will.
Yeah, at that time, yes, that's our plan. And, we might, based on the feedback at that time, board can direct us to further, research, analyze, or approve the plan.
Okay,
What do you
just
think?
as we're talking to folks, again, recognizing this has been evolving, almost minute to minute on some days, I'm sure. But a month from now, we'll be back, less than a month from now, you'll be before us with a recommendation that obviously will set the stage for decisions by this board, potentially that evening. That evening.
Correct.
Yes.
Right. Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next item.
Next item, item number 10, information, potential future temporary use of property at the Florin Road Light Rail Station, introduced by Brent Berger.
Okay, good evening, Chair Kennedy and members of the board. As Cindy noted, this is an informational item. Therefore, at the conclusion of this item, staff is seeking direction from the board. As discussed within the staff report, the City of Sacramento, the city council members are examining various options for a temporary shelter for the homeless. The Florin Light Rail parking area has been discussed as a site to consider, and I've got a map. As you're aware, this parking lot is currently underutilized. Therefore, this site has been declared surplus, and SAC-RT staff is in the process of seeking permanent development opportunities at this location. Today, we have members of the city to provide the board with their interest in this site. However, before I start, I'd like to introduce Director Chenier to have a chance to say a couple words.
Thank you. I just wanted to see if I could provide a little bit of context for the discussion. I did ask for this. We clearly have a major crisis of homelessness in the city and beyond. And what we have done is really look across the city. The mayor has asked each council district to take 100 beds in some form or fashion. And so this is within my district. This is really a priority for us. What I'd like to do today is Emily Halkin from the city can talk, and this is really, Mr. Chair, up to the board of how much detail they want on our overall plan. And then what I'd like to do is, we'll hear from the public, I assume, and then come back with some direction and frame some of the questions that the city and RT would have to answer before a next step would come forward. So I don't know how much detail you want on what the city is trying to do.
Why don't you present? I have a feeling that the board members will not be shy. So if there's more
Okay.
questions.
Thank you for having me. Emily Halkin, Homeless Services Coordinator with the City of Sacramento. And so I'll just give a little overview on how the city has been and intends to continue to approach sheltering options, including this site, but any other potential site. So we are currently supporting in one way or another 6 different shelters throughout the City of Sacramento, some in partnership with the county and SHRA, some on our own. The largest and newest effort, which you may have heard of, that we opened a year ago, December, is what we call the Railroad Triage Shelter, located in Del Paso Heights in the city of Sacramento. And we very purposely opened that with the intention of trying to offer shelter in a different way, in a way that hadn't been done in Sacramento on this scale, in this manner. And it allowed us to start thinking about how we might want shelters in the future as a whole to operate. And we really hope that as we start to look at new sheltering opportunities, that the lessons we've learned there can be replicated in those shelters. So a few things just to describe how Railroad is that I think will translate into our vision. Railroad is very purposely designed as what we call a low barrier shelter. And what that means is a lot of different things, but basically it means we allow people to come as they are. We place as few limitations on both the access to the shelter and their ability to stay in the shelter. So that means stuff like accepting them with pets, partners, and possessions, the 3 Ps. No drug screening, however, you're not allowed to use drugs or alcohol on site. There generally aren't limits on the length of stay that at the shelter. And there are deep services offered, but they are not required as a condition of their tenancy at the shelter. And we purposely bring in a lot of collaborative partnerships. It's not on the back of one single entity. Important also to our ability to stand up Railroad, and I think will be important in future shelter endeavors, is we really change the way that shelters are accessed. Before the Railroad shelter and some other shelters we have in our community, a person experiencing homelessness in Sacramento had to go knock on multiple doors or sign up for multiple wait lists or jump through different types of hoops depending on the shelter. This was not only confusing for the clients, but it also can really impact neighborhoods because it almost forced people to loiter around shelters and it forced them to queue up in places in hopes for a shelter bed. So at Railroad and any future shelters that we would be opening, intake would be through outreach only. And in the city, that primarily means a coordination with our police impact team and our community health workers who are clinically trained outreach professionals. Additionally, as we did at Railroad, we look to first target the immediate surrounding area where that shelter is located, working with known encampments in the community and inviting those folks in first. And secondly, targeting those who are most vulnerable or those who are least likely or least able to access traditional shelters. And what we've seen as a result of these 2 things, the limited access and the low barriers, is that we indeed are serving people who traditionally are not served in other sheltering programs. After we initially occupied the Railroad shelter a couple months in, we looked at the people who had come in and saw that 52% of them were completely disconnected from the homeless system of care. They had no record in our homeless management information system, yet they self-reported they'd been homeless for 2, 3, 5, 20 years, and they were very well known to our outreach folks. In addition, they are disproportionately skewing towards being older. Over half the people we serve are over the age of 50. Over 60% report being homeless for at least 1 continuous year, for many, many longer than that. And over 80% self-report a disabling condition. And so what this is telling me is that we have actually done something different, but it doesn't come without challenges, and we certainly want to recognize that. We are serving a very vulnerable population with a lot of challenges, and we know that there are some very, very real impacts on the communities that host shelters like this. Railroad is a little bit unique, and it is in a site where there already were substantial encampments and some ongoing issues with those encampments. But we did focus on intensive outreach in those areas, and we also offered the community some additional mitigation. At the railroad site, that included things like additional police patrols dedicated to that immediate area, working with the business improvement district, some additional public works support to pick up debris and trash, and the creation of a downtown street team, which is a dedicated crew of folks who are currently or formerly experiencing homelessness, who do outreach and engagement and pick up debris and trash, do graffiti removal on a very, very localized basis. Finally, the other challenge at Railroad is the building itself. We don't own it. We have a lease on the property. It's a big warehouse, and it's not designed to be a shelter. And it has been very difficult at times to maintain that facility. At future sites, with a blank slate, we intend to design from the ground up as a shelter. So we'll be able to build in things that will accommodate the population in a better way. This includes stuff like appropriate outdoor space, additional storage for the stuff that people come with, and some better restroom and shower facilities. So at this point, we are at the front end, as Councilmember Chenier shared, of looking for sites throughout the community. And as you can imagine, these are difficult to find, and not every site is appropriate, but we are very excited to have this conversation with the RT board and potentially with the community tomorrow night, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
If I could just add a couple of points about the site. So the site itself is 21 acres that RT owns. There are kind of 4 parking lots on site and then a grassy area. Well, and there have been a lot of discussions around transit-oriented development, particularly in the front 2 sites, the front 2 parking lots that are further south. What we're looking at is the potential of probably 2 years to do something in one of the back parking lots away from the actual light rail station, which would retain the parking in that lot by the station as well. So that's kind of what we're looking at, and Mr. Chair, if you want to do public comment.
Yeah, we do have a few cards, so thank you very much.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Excuse me, before Emily leaves the podium,
Yes.
I had a question. Just a general question about the initiative that the mayor has set for the entire council to look at each district and look for those 100 beds. Is the city also simultaneously kind of keeping its thumb on the pulse of what are the socioeconomic conditions of any of the sites, around any of the sites that are proposed? So it's not just the geography of the political geography of the city, the districts, but is there an ongoing assessment of when these sites are proposed, whether they be RT facilities or city facilities or others, who is the surrounding community, the immediate surrounding community? Is the city doing that?
I think it's a really good question. I think we have done it site by site. No site has been formally proposed at this point, so at this point it's kind of hypothetical, but certainly not just who's experiencing homelessness in that community, but who is the housed population, how will they be impacted. That was a big part of the conversation with the railroad, and I would assume that any future site we would engage local community groups, PBIDs, other types of organizations to learn about the very real issues and challenges and hopefully opportunities. But there hasn't been a concerted effort that I'm aware of, because at this point it's kind of hypothetical.
If I can answer it really quickly too, because I think it's a really important question.
Yeah.
I'm looking at 2 sites in my district which are very different economically. And of the sites I know, and I don't know all of my colleagues what they're looking at, there is a range of socioeconomic status around those sites. It's not all poor areas or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Just
totally.
Yeah, Emily, before you leave, because you touched on it with regards to the Railroad Avenue site. So I want to be understanding of, is the approach going to mimic that in the sense that it's low barrier, you can't use drugs or alcohol on site, but you don't have to come in and take advantage of services? Basically, you're just sheltering with a opportunity to access services, and you gave the statistics, and I appreciated those. But I'm curious to know, is it all going to mirror that? Because again, some of the approaches have been taken elsewhere, may or may not have that component. I know there's this emphasis on housing first, but I think that obviously has some relevance to, I think, the reception you may get from folks in the community. So, and is this, you show up and you get entry, or is this a placement? I don't mean just this site, but kind of what you're looking at and obviously there are council members on the body here that are, probably given similar searches, but I guess I'm curious as to know what the approach is in general.
Yeah, so I think on your first question about the approach is, I think the intention of the council, and any of you guys can speak out, is that for the large triage shelters, they would be similarly arranged like railroad with low barrier entry and deep services, wraparound services. But the council has had a pretty robust conversation about the need for other types of sheltering. We had a workshop back in October, and I think that there's some special populations that might not be appropriate for a large triage shelter. I'm thinking of youth, I'm thinking of women and children, LGBT communities. And so there are other activities to try to address the sheltering needs of those smaller populations, probably not in a very large sprung structure type of facility. So those are kind of happening simultaneously in my division. And then your second question about access, this is not a, as railroad runs, and as I would presume this would run too, this would not be a walk-up, so it would be access only through outreach. So similar to the county's scattered site shelters, where our outreach workers, in our case it's the impact team and the community health workers, are identifying known encampments and oftentimes bringing them in together.
Okay, and just one follow-on, and again, maybe not for this evening's discussion, you're going to go to the community, but I trust you're going to get it if you haven't already got the question from Councilmember Chenier or others. So what about containment of the camps that aren't associated with the shelter itself, and how do you deal with that? You have public property in this case, obviously you have neighborhoods and business districts, and anyone who's visited Railroad Avenue can see what may have existed in some of that pre that shelter, but certainly a fairly heavy concentration of folks that are outside. Again, not necessarily doing anything nefarious, but nonetheless, if you go look at the levee and you go look at some of the adjacent parkway areas and so forth, there were folks there to begin with, but there are certainly folks there that are proximate to Railroad Avenue. I haven't been out there in recent weeks, so I don't know the existing situation, but I've been out there a couple times over the last few months. So how would you deal with this on this side, or is that still something that you're looking at? Because again, those are placed there, but others will, maybe folks that are there right now, but I mean, that will find this an opportunity to be proximate to an area that obviously provides some level of service and other folks. So how are you, and again, looking in the city, how are you looking at dealing with that?
Sure, I think that's a very fair question. You are right, Railroad is a little bit unique. It backs right up immediately to the parkway, and there were lots and lots of encampments, and they are still there. They are still there. I think, though, one of the reasons we were very purposeful, including mitigation, so additional police teams, additional patrol officers who are accessible to that area, the downtown street team. I would presume a site like this that isn't built would offer us the opportunity again to design it, maybe with some fencing and some more controls. As at Railroad, you can't just walk up and walk in, and people have learned that you can't queue out there in order to get access. That being said, there are encampments. Those encampments were there before, and they'll probably be there winter if Railroad closes. So I think those are the kinds of things that we really need to understand from each community, and each site has different accompanying or associated neighboring uses, so it would have to depend on those.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So how does staff, what would be the kind of deal points or potential deal points with the city to allow staff to reclaim this for Todd or some other transit-related purpose as opposed to this particular use, which how do you keep it from creating an entitlement?
Yeah, so I think one of the things we would look at, there's a set of issues that if we move forward after tonight, that the city and RT would look at. Certainly the duration of the lease would be and at what point, depending on what type of transit-oriented development comes in, and we're a number of years away from actually realizing that. We have a lot of work to do. I would see that if it's affordable housing, it may work with a shelter next door. If it's not affordable housing and RT is doing something else around TOD, then the shelter would not be there because you couldn't do that. But what we're looking at is trying to get through 2 winters on this shelter, and we can always have the discussion later on, depending on how it's working, how the community feels, what else RT is doing with the land to make decisions about going forward or not.
Okay, now we do have some cards, and keep in mind that this is not a proposal in any way brought forward by RT staff. This is a proposal or a trial balloon that has been floated by the city of Sacramento to gain comments and perhaps look into this further. So nothing, it couldn't be farther from anything being decided at this point. And Golf Course Terrace is in the house. Gloria Lapp.
I live probably a mile from the light rail station. I was there again today, and there was quite a bit of litter, tall weeds and things that are still there. It's not being kept up at all. I met with one of the owners that lives in the Woodbine area, which is right there, and they're very concerned. They're already having people going through the backyards into their recycle bins, taking things and stealing quite a bit. We also have lost our park, our community park, due to the homeless in the park. I understand that you're going to try and move those folks from there into this shelter if it's approved. But I will say the majority of the board from Golf Course Terrace Estates Neighborhood Association does not want that tent there.
Thank you. Tiffany Fink.
Good evening, Supervisor Kennedy and the board. I'm Tiffany Fink. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Paratransit. If you look at the property and you go to the west or to your left, we're the other transit property, and we own actually 3 additional vacant parcels on Woodbine. There are 3 major landowners west of the railroad tracks, RT, ourselves, and there's one other. So I'm here tonight both as the CEO, but also as the Secretary Treasurer of the Florin PBID. And so we look forward to reaching out and working with RT and the city on what the options are for that. Obviously, we serve a very vulnerable population. We see what's happening on it. We operate 21 hours a day, so we're very familiar with the use of that station. We're very interested in making sure that the PBID renewed, and clean and safe was the #1 item. We're very lucky that our homeless navigator has placed and homed a very large number of people in our district. So we're happy to have a conversation, and we've already started the conversation with the city, both as an entity and as the PBID, but we look forward to whatever that is, to looking at how do we serve the vulnerable, which is obviously the mission both of RT as a transit agency and Paratransit, but also work with the community to find the solution that's best for the community. And so we're here to offer that we would like to be part of that conversation on how we work together.
Thank you. Jeffrey Tartagia.
Jeff Tartagia, as I'm looking at this map, I'm going to say to you, it really been wonderful after last, shall we say, Tuesday City Hall meeting, that this would have been something for small homes. I'm not clear yet about, this, should we say, using just this small portion of the property. And again, like has other been brought up about how in the means that secure it. At the same time, I would say this is a much better property for transit development usage, and this would be a temporary use right now to see what would be and what would happen when you attract, should we say, a population and hopefully associated services that will maintain and deal with the population. I haven't seen whether this is more than 200, but there's, I believe, services that are going through with this if you're expanding the tent. And I believe this is a tent project.
Thank you. Fatima Martinez.
Good afternoon or good evening, board. I'm Fatima Martinez. I'm a social worker and community member. I've lived in that area my entire life. I'm really excited about any type of innovative and rapid response that the city and other jurisdictions can do in this area. Any community member that's even active in that area and goes around and walks around and knows their community, knows that there's homeless individuals that are already unsheltered in that area. So any kind of response that supports kind of the NIMBY, the not in my backyard, it's really not an informed response. And like I said, I'm here to support any idea that the city has to bring people from outside into a shelter. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Hodgkins.
You'll be surprised to know, and some of you may know, that I do not live in the city, let alone near this parcel. But I will say this, I do support this project because it is a step toward having affordable housing, that which, if you ask me, is the best type of transit-oriented development near our light rail stations. The other form of transit-oriented development that I would support would be employment centers and recreation centers, but also having affordable housing as a follow-up to this project at near our light rail stations. And I speak about this not only because I support it as a first step towards permanent affordable housing, but Governor Newsom 2 weeks ago issued an order, and everyone on the board, listen, because you're either a city council member or you're a county supervisor. If cities and counties do not meet their housing goals, or is it the state housing goals, you could actually lose state transportation funds. So this is a first step towards affordable housing near our light rail stations, and which I will support. But this is a first step. So, and you know, I've been told that South Sacramento has been a scary place. So let's allow these people off the streets and get them into shelters until affordable housing is available. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the last card we have from public comment, so we'll take it back to the board. Vice Chair Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Chenier, for bringing this. I know that this is something the city is working on, but homelessness in our region has been certainly something that I know almost all of our jurisdictions have been grappling with. And we've had a really fruitful partnership with the county of late. And as we look at this, though, I think that there's a couple questions. Whether it's a sprung tent, which is certainly, I think, the intent of Director Chenier, or the idea of tiny homes. I think we should look at a variety of options, especially as we work with the neighbors. And I think this is just feasibility now, so that's probably appropriate. The other thing, though, Ms. Fink, now that I've been reappointed to your board, I can ask this. Which parcels do we own at Paratransit? I should probably know this, but maybe you can just show us on the... So all of this property... Yeah, I know that. That's our headquarters. All of this property is and we lease a big chunk of this. And we will develop that. Do you know who owns the big chunk but to the east of that?
Private owner. There is a private owner and the family's held it for a very long period of time.
Okay. I was going to say, if we owned that, that would be a great site to do something because it's pretty isolated and big. But I'd also like us to look at well, it's kind of close to the neighbors and there's not much of a barrier. On the north end, that also seems like it could be a nice place, even though it's not paved, which I know has been one of the key constraints for a potential sprung shelter. But, you know, it's worth just understanding what the options are. Do we have a timeline to do this analysis?
Yeah. If I can go last.
Yeah.
I'll try to answer that.
All right.
Okay, anybody else?
The last thing I was going to say, I'm sorry, was, you know, we've got to try everything. RT is certainly not a city entity, but we're a member. And this issue, as it crosses boundaries, RT has actually been a leader bringing navigators onto our trains and buses, working at stations with people, partnering with Sacramento Steps Forward. I think this is only a natural opportunity to partner with our patrons, many of which who are also experiencing, whether it's, you know, they don't have a lot of resources, or we actually have a lot of people who are unsheltered who are using our system. And this is a way to sort of hopefully continue our progress in making our system clean, safe, and convenient, and really a good partner to the rest of the community.
Okay, I have a few. Oh, sorry.
You want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
So I want to thank also Director Chenier and the city for bringing this forward. We're all working on this what is a human tragedy together, and looking at every possible solution or even stopgap measure is critical that we do that, and we totally, completely vet whatever we can. As we go forward and look, if we're to look further into this, I want to just voice a few of my concerns up front. This also is the area that is within the district that I represent, and I do want to thank Director Chenier for reaching out to me very early on this. First, some specific, my concerns are its proximity to housing, and I'd like to, we need to talk about that. Its proximity to Burbank High School. That's something that needs to be considered. The social equity issues I share with Director Cerna, and that needs to be completely vetted and considered before any of these get placed, frankly. I'd also like to look at, if this were to happen and go forward, it would have to be a real ironclad agreement so that there is some kind of recourse. If, and I'll tell you, in all honesty, I have been a couple of times to Railroad Drive. They're doing great work, there's no question about it. Once you're in that building, it's as Director Natoli stated, it's what's happening outside the building that concerns me. And if this were to turn into anything remotely like that, that would be a significant concern, obviously. I'm comfortable with the TOD issue because, as Director Chenier says, that's a long-term issue that we will be working on for the next couple of years. But finally, and this is more of an overall concern that I have, and that's in my fiduciary duty as the chair of this board, and the impacts that this might have on RT. Many people up here at this dais have worked very hard over the years to turn RT around, and our staff has done an amazing job of really taking an agency that was not looked upon very highly by the public, and as a result, we watched ridership continue to go down and down and down, even beyond what the national average is. As the vice chair pointed out, clean, safe, and convenient has been become our mantra, and I'm concerned at the perception of RT, the perception of RT riders, and potential riders, and the impact that this would have on a reputation that we are trying to bring up, and what this does to impact our efforts for clean, safe, and convenient. Those are the issues that I would like to further delve into if we are to consider this moving forward.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your eloquent comments. I agree with you 100%.
Thank you. That's please write that down, someone.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to second that feeling. I jotted down, one of my primary concerns is for our riders, and that they do feel safe, that the station remains clean, and I would just add secure as well. Those are my concerns, and I share them. But I don't have the answers, and I appreciate everything you're doing. If I did have the answers, it would be Governor Miller, not Newsom, I think. But I don't.
Well, coming from President Kennedy.
There you go.
Mr. Jennings.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the concerns that have been expressed here from, every board member that has come to the table, as well as the public. I just know that in Sacramento we have to find solutions, and we have to work together to find those solutions. And I really appreciate some of the comments from the public that came up to speak to the solutions that we have to find together in order to address a very serious problem that we have. There are many reasons that we shouldn't do this, but there are many more reasons why we should. And we at least have to look at the options. And I'm convinced that we have enough smart people on this board and in this community that can come together and look at every variable that exists to find out whether it's in the best interest for us to put it there or not. And I think that's why I give you applaud, Councilmember Chenier, by bringing this forward. We're not just saying, here it is and it's going to happen. We're looking at every potential option. And we don't have any options in the South area, not that I'm aware of. And that's a serious problem. As someone who represents the South area, Valley High and Greenhaven Pocket area, and I go through the community, I don't have a place to refer those who are homeless to go to. I don't have a triage center. I don't have a place where they can go get the kind of help that they need. And so sometimes I have to take a blind eye to the problems that they're going through because I don't have a solution for them. And I think if we're going to be a city that works for everyone, we have to have solutions that work throughout the entire city. And so I'm very much interested in this potential solution, and we're looking for many more as well. And so I'm looking forward to working with you on this issue, Councilmember Chenier.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Otherwise, we will, okay.
I appreciate both your comments, Rick, as well as yours, Patrick. And I think being from outside the city of Sacramento, and I know what's happening in Folsom, and we're in a somewhat different situation where we're in the middle of our 12 weeks of housing people at various shelters and various churches, working with our faith-based community and other 501c3s in town. But I see this as a bigger problem than just the city of Sacramento. It's a regional problem. And this board is very regional, and we need to be looking at all sorts of opportunities. And I think, yes, there could be some negatives to this. There could be some positives. And I think it's important that this board is willing to at least look at that and see what we can do in order to find solutions that help all of us in the region. So I look forward to discussing it.
Thank you. I believe Director Chenier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I appreciate everyone's comments. We took notes. I took notes. We're in a crisis situation. There's no question about it, and it's getting worse. And I assume from the point in time count that's going to go on this week, when we get the results, we'll know how much worse it actually is. But we can just see it anecdotally. We learned a lot in doing railroad. We learned what works. We learned what doesn't. We have permanently housed over 160, 170 individuals coming out of that shelter and worked with over 600 people over the course of 12, 13 months now in that. Those are lessons learned that we spent a lot of time and energy on, and those are lessons learned that we will use as we go forward in putting together new shelters. We have very few choices here. I mean, I've looked in my district, which is all within RT. I've looked for the last 8-9 months, if not the last 4 or 5 years, for sites to do this type of thing, and they just don't exist. We have an opportunity here, and I appreciate Mr. Kennedy noting that this won't affect the TOD issue. We will be done and out long before that actually comes to pass. But I think what we need to do as a board is really make decisions on data. And so my hope is that we can provide some direction to the general manager and his staff to take a look at a number of things working with the city and then bring back a more fleshed out issue paper of what the items would be, where the board could actually make decisions based on the data. It would include the duration of the lease, and Brent, I'll give you all this stuff later. The duration of the lease, the cost of the lease. This would be a revenue maker for RT. I don't know exactly what, but the city would be paying rent on that. What type of fencing that goes with the security and safety issues that we would need. What about utilities, who pays there? And the difference, I think, between this and the grassy area behind it is that there are utilities there that we could tap into and make it work a lot quicker. I'd be very interested, and Henry and I talked about this a little bit, in the city purchasing transit passes for all of the residents of the shelter. So that would be another revenue producer and ridership producer for RT. Any other mitigation measures that would be necessary. Again, doing this for at least 2 winters with some types of options or discussion triggered by success. And it would be good if we could also develop some metrics of whether this is being successful or not. And we had a discussion with the PBID today, which I think is the first of good discussions we'll have, and we'll be meeting with RT about the maintenance of the station as it is as well. But what can we do to really improve the neighborhood, and using folks potentially in the shelter or through our downtown streets program, which is folks that are cleaning up in the vicinity, to help with what's going on Florin Road overall. So with that, what I'd like to do, and we also will continue to reach out to the community. We have been talking to neighborhood. We called the president of Golf Course Terrace. We've reached out to a number of neighborhood leaders. We'll continue to do that. We have a community meeting tomorrow night at Burbank High School at 6 o'clock. We'll go until there's no more questions to be answered so that we really can bring back to RT through Emily. These are all the questions that were raised and seeing if we can find answers. So my hope would be that this board accepts that direction for the staff to come back to us as soon as they can with answers to flesh all of this out. We estimate on these sprung tents about a 6 to 8 month process to get them up and running. So if we were going to try to do that for the winter, we need to move within 30 to 60 days here to get going on it. And that's really the need. You know, I think overall homelessness is the largest threat we have to our community, both fiscally, but who we are morally. And it's going to require some risk, but we can learn. And Carrie, I appreciate what you said. We need to learn from these things because it's not just a Sacramento problem. It is a county problem. It is a regional problem. And if we can learn from these things, it would be great. And we do need to look at the equity question. We need to look at where these are going. As I said, I have one other site that is a little more complicated that we're trying to work on. If I can put 200 beds in my district, I'm more than willing to do it. We have to fix this problem. That's the bottom line.
I have one question, though,
Sure.
clarification. Are you talking about this winter?
No, next winter.
Because we're, okay, all right.
6, 7 months from now. Yeah.
Sure.
I can't go retroactive.
Director Natoli has a question.
Yeah, just a question. So these are winter shelter, so these are 4-month shelters proposed? And then
No,
what-
no.
They're
this would be-
year-round. They're
It
year-round.
would be year-round.
They're year-round. People are there, all, okay.
But the hope is that because the winters are so harsh, I mean, we have people dying on a weekly basis, that we can get up and running by next winter.
So these are year-round, full-time shelter, okay.
Yep. Triage.
Okay, so I believe that the direction that I've heard is for the board to, for the staff to look at the issues that have been brought up and any other outlying issues and address what that might look like if this were to go forward. And I would appreciate it as not only chair, but also one of the two electeds that represents the area to be a part of that conversation. Thank you. And anybody else? All right, thank you.
Mr. Kennedy, let me just say also, so thank you for that. If you want a county staff member to be involved to represent you on that, I think this is going to be a staff level discussion for a while.
I'm just kind of staff level.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm going to be involved.
We'll work on that. Okay. All right. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Moving on, item number 11, the general manager's report.
Okay.
Microphone.
Chair, can we start? Can we start?
Yes.
Okay. We have a very short presentation. Brent is going to talk about our KPIs.
Great. So I'll make it quick. I know everyone's ready to go. We have closed the books for the month of December. Again, the positive results that we had were really great. 400,000 approximately as a surplus for December for the month. And year to date, it's about 3 million. For the 6 months, this is great so far. During the next 6 months, we always like to anticipate what's coming up. And if you think about it, we brought back late night service and weekend service, so we'll start seeing these expenses start creeping up again. And also, I want to keep in mind, although this is positive news and we love positive news, we also have to keep in mind that the debt service payment that will come in to play will come in next fiscal year, and that's about $3.5 million. So we want to have this positive result so we're ready for the debt service. So everything's looking good and we're on target. Next, I'd like to go into the next slide that we have is the deferred revenue. As you can see, the deferred revenue is continuing to climb. Again, this is good news. This is people that have prepaid for their media and haven't used it yet. So really positive news there. The next slide we have is just our fare box recovery ratio. We need to hit the target of 23%. We continue to use Measure A to supplement that. we're in no jeopardy of going below that 23%. We have sufficient Measure A to continue to supplement. Finally, on the ridership, this is where we have some really great news. Compared to our goal, we're seeing positive trends in ridership. In December of 2018, you can see compared to our goal, we're at 5.7% above the goal, and year to date, it's about 4.3% above the goal. Where in comparing ridership to last fiscal year, that's what these last three charts are. You'll see the first quarter we're down. It's about 5% down, but the second quarter you'll see a sharp turnaround. There's a couple of slides we did, one with the data with the fire and one with the data that does not include the fire. And if you exclude the fire, which is everyone knows the major fire that we had that left people at home driving or not coming to work on those days, we still, if you would exclude that, we actually saw a 2.4% increase in ridership. So that's really great news. Going forward with the additional service improvements, looking at the next 6 months, you have the Los Rios student increased access. We have the reinstatement of cash fares, the continued positive trend from the fare reduction. We anticipate this ridership to continue to grow, and our goal is to at least to get back to the FY 2017 ridership numbers. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Otherwise, we're completed.
Questions? Great. Thank you.
This is a general question.
Sure.
Why are we not planning for those, what I assume are bond payments as we go along?
No, that's a great question, and that's kind of what we had, and that's why I bring this up. We actually had set aside that we need to have a surplus for that payment. So that surplus we have right now will go towards it. We also have SB1 money, so we kind of have a bank, and depending on the next budget. So right now we're doing the mid-year budget cycle, and while we're doing the mid-year, we'll be forecasting out the next year's budget, and we'll determine how much SB1 money we have to apply to that or how much surplus we can continue to apply.
I'd rather you say reserve than surplus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to be careful not to say reserve because that requires the board approval to
Oh,
utilize
but
it. That's why I use surplus. Where this is just extra revenue that we can set aside without board approval, if that makes sense. But I think we're similar.
Maybe you even just call it set aside.
Okay.
But, put that number up with whatever the anticipated bond indebtedness or debt payment is.
And maybe just to give you a little bit more comfort, that first year of 3.5 million, that's a full year. The first year we won't have a full year. It's about the first year that we'll have when this debt service comes back is about 2.4 million. So again, we're setting ourselves up for a good position. From the bank's perspective, they also like to see that we're exceeding targets, that we're not just breaking even. You do not want to, in a transit agency, you do not want to just be at a break-even point. We have, drivers that have fixed runs that are preset, and it's not easy to make quick changes in a transit agency. So we definitely want to always have a surplus, cushion, set aside, whatever we'd like to call that.
And I'm kind of asking the question because I'm new at looking at
Sure.
how you guys budget. I'm used to looking at what STA does, what Regional Sand does, and frankly, if you're talking about a sewer agency, also not easy to do changes real quick.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, right.
The flows keep coming.
That's correct.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brent.
That concludes my general manager's report.
Okay, we do have two cards. Rick Hodgkins.
Short and sweet, that's what I like to see. Again, I cannot stress enough, as other people can't, that we need to work on the continuing sales tax local sales tax for transit. Mr. Barnbaum, 2 weeks ago, mentioned ACA 1 put forth by Assemblymember Cecilia Aguiar Curry. I also would support SCA 6 put forth by Senator Scott Wiener as it goes to transit. I would like to point out, because, someone, Brett, I know you mentioned the bond debt, so want to make sure that we can pay that off without having to roll back service. Second, you mentioned fair media or prepaid media. I'm a regional center client, and I was surprised to find out that no money was loaded onto my card January 1st. And I found that surprising on the 18th of this month when I had to go get blood work done for a doctor appointment last week and also attend a housing forum put on by State Treasurer Fiona Ma. I found out because I talked to the transportation coordinator at the regional center. He said he'll load my card up for February, and which is fine and dandy, but there has to be, because I had money on there at December, but when January 1st came along, something happened. I never got anything loaded on my card. So hopefully that if there are glitches in Connect Card, that which I hear other people talk about, hopefully we can get those resolved. So thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Tartagia.
And good evening, Board. I'm going to serve as two reminders in your general manager's report is that please, next month, that you use this as an example for some of the changes that are being proposed. Because I will tell you, there's a lot of fear about 22. There's a lot of fear with a number of the changes. I like, and I've still been working since the first meeting on the 38. I think there's still some things to be worked on through there. I'm looking forward, and I'm going to make a good effort try to Friday to get with your transit meeting. And the other thing is it's February 2nd is your museum day. I appreciated your changes of dealing with so that it would cover a much better thing for increasing ridership. And that's my general manager comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Board have any questions, comments? Mr. Hume.
I do have a comment, and I'll keep it brief because this meeting has gone longer than I anticipated it would. But I just want to put this out into the ether in case you missed it in Mr. Barnbaum's recap of the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority meeting. I know many of you were at the Central Valley Station for the fanfare surrounding the arrival of the first commuter express train for the San Joaquins. Unfortunately, the board at the last meeting had to vote to discontinue that service. We could never get ridership up above about 50 to 60 riders, and to run a whole train for that amount of people didn't make sense. But it presents a kind of a larger issue that I'm also dealing with, in that I met with the property owners who have a designated high-density site within the city that would be the logical terminus for the next extension of the Blue Line. And I'm encouraging them to go to a higher density than necessarily maybe they would want to, with the idea of coupling that with transit. And it just presents this interesting chicken and egg conundrum, in that we've all heard the idea, the adage of if you build it, they will come, but we can't determine which is the it and who are the they, because you need the density to justify the transit, but you need the transit to make the lifestyle choice for the density. And I think what happened in the case of the San Joaquins is you had people, to live in Fresno or Madera and think you're going to have business commute traffic coming to Sacramento. That's something you better kind of arrange ahead of time. You don't wait for it to show up on the doorstep. And unfortunately, we just couldn't continue to bleed out to run that service until such time as people did see it as viable. So something to consider as we do all these transit modifications.
Mr. Chair, I just have one comment about what you just mentioned. Director Hume just talked about. Last week we had a downtown, state of downtown. They invite expert from Seattle talking about Seattle's development. She talked about some very, very good points. One of the major points she talked about, you have to develop transit first before you develop housing. Housing development and transit are the same. Without transit, there will be no major, development, the housing development or density development. So, I know this idea kind of is very, different from some, our here, traditional thinking, conventional thinking. We always want development first, then transit. I think we need to change our mindset now. so how successful Seattle is, we needed to really think through on that.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we have no closed session, so we're adjourned.